altered state. Sometimes people who work together fall in love by accident. It's not too surprising if you think about it. Put a group of attractive people together in close proximity. Sometimes people who work together fall in love by accident. It's not too surprising if you think about it. Put a group of attractive people together in close proximity with a sense of camaraderie, and romantic attachments are obvious risks. But a work crush can have grave professional consequences. In this video we're going to discuss why workplace crushes are so common, how the work environment can escalate a mild attraction into a raging bout of obsessive limerance, why it's so hard to recover, and what can actually be practically done. Hi, my name is Tom Bellamy. I'm a neuroscientist and writer, and I blog all about limerance, that altered state of mind of obsessive romantic infatuation, at livingwithlimerance.com. I'm also the author of the book Smitten, which explains in detail what limerance is, how neuroscience can help us make sense of it, and how to recover from it. Okay, let's analyse workplace limerance. Now, an obvious starting point is that anywhere we are regularly exposed to other attractive people is a potential venue for developing a crush. When I was growing up in the 1980s, nearly a quarter of people met their long-term romantic partners through work, so it was fairly normal for workplace crushes to become relationships. But that was long before the era of dating apps and social media, and things have changed a lot. Now, over 60% of people meet their partner online, and only 7% meet them through work. The attitude to workplace romances has also changed, to the extent that many businesses now have strict HR rules in place to regulate them. Now, that's a big cultural change, but the fundamentals of human attraction, romantic desire, pair bonding haven't changed. Workplaces are still a hotbed for infatuations. In fact, in many ways, the current structures and conventions of the workplace make it more likely that a flame of attraction will flare up into the firestorm of addiction to the person. So there are a number of reasons why the conditions of a typical workplace help infatuations develop. First, there's obvious simple proximity. You're thrown together with people who you're obliged to spend time with, and some of them are bound to be attractive to you. It might just be dumb luck that one of them turns out to be the perfect match for your personal limerance triggers. And because you share the same workplace, this exposure is unavoidable. You see them regularly. Anytime that you feel the impulse to get a little hit of romantic pleasure, they're only a glance away. And every stolen glance, every time they smile at you, every happy laugh that you can win from them will reinforce that crush. Second, having a common purpose promotes social emotional bonding. Typically, work colleagues go through shared trials, shared triumphs and disasters, shared gossip, shared complaints about management and their stupid decisions. Just simple shared experiences. This builds camaraderie and familiarity and bonds of social attachment. Now, if it turns out that you connect especially well with the person that you have a crush on, that social bonding can progress into escalating affection. Working closely with someone you like feels good. It makes the daily grind more enjoyable, it energizes you, it might even increase your productivity and help you achieve more professional success. And that might lead to praise from your boss and a boost in self-esteem. Now, all those good vibes get associated with your enlivening co-worker. It takes a high degree of self-awareness to start questioning that positive feedback loop. Most people don't contemplate where those warm feelings might lead them until it's too late. Instead, in order to preserve the emotional boost, they come up with rationalizations about why everything's fine. We're just a great team. It's good that work is fun again. Why rock the boat? Now, this instinct to willfully ignore the escalating affection can also be made worse by a fourth factor of the workplace: compartmentalization. Work life and home life are separate. This often translates into feeling different too. There is mental and emotional compartmentalization to go along with the literal physical compartmentalization, and it means that we behave differently in the two venues as well. It's all too easy to get into the habit of believing that your work life and home life are separate and can be pursued independently. That creates the illusion that the consequences of your behaviour can be compartmentalised too. Now, all these factors prime the conditions for a workplace crush to develop further, and unfortunately, if it does, it can escalate into the much more serious romantic obsession of limerence. If you are free to act on those escalating feelings, then you could, in principle, depending on the HR rules in your workplace, see if you could be in that 7% of couples who meet at work. More commonly though, there are barriers in place, personal or professional barriers, that stop you from taking action. Ironically, the very presence of those barriers reinforces limerence, because the limerence is amplified by uncertainty. When you know you want them, but you can't have them, the desire doesn't fade. Strengthens. They take on extra psychological significance. The buzz of being with them grows. You start to notice them more, the way they smell, their hair, their body, their belongings. Everything about them seems more potent. Intimacy seems to kind of hang heavy in the air when you're with them. They take up more of your mental space. And you feel like a different person when you're with them. They're always in your mind when you're apart. And those neat compartments you thought were separate begin to break down. They've become your limerent object, the person that you project your romantic dreams onto. Any early boost of productivity starts to deteriorate at this stage as you spend more time lost in obsessive thoughts or trying to connect with them at a more personal level, less time focused on your work. Maybe you overshare, talking about your private hopes and worries, perhaps even talking about your existing relationship and maybe your frustrations with your partner. Before you know it, you are in a completely different mental state. You're captured by limerence. You're addicted to your co-worker and you can't escape. Then the consequences really begin to pile up. The first and most serious consequence of a failure to manage your limerent impulses is that your limerent object might make a complaint of misconduct. Now, we hear a lot about toxic scenarios where people abuse positions of power to harass co-workers, overstep boundaries and make unwelcome advances. And fair enough, it's obviously a serious issue and we want the workplace to be free of harassment. Unfortunately, a difficulty in many of these cases is that human behaviour is fraught with misperceptions and misunderstandings. So the limerent may feel their behaviour is innocent. I didn't mean it like that. I thought she was into me too. I was just joking around. So the limerent might be trying to manage their crush, but the emotional flood just won't stay dammed up and it keeps leaking out in embarrassing ways, maybe excessive praise or clumsy hints or innuendos, sexualized jokes, or hanging around their limerent object at every possible opportunity until they become a pest. Limerence is also an altered state of mind that messes with your judgment, so you're just experiencing positive feelings of overwhelming love and affection that you want to express. How can any harm come from that? Well, your romantic dreams might seem wonderful to you, but your behaviour can be received in a very different way by the limerent object. That can be the point at which the HR department gets involved and serious consequences begin to follow. Now, even if the limerent object doesn't make a formal complaint, misconduct isn't just about harassment. Limerents who have professional influence over their limerent object often misuse it. They show favoritism, giving their limerent object opportunities that others would have wanted, perhaps granting them more responsibility at work, giving them effusive praise, plum work assignments, or bonuses and rewards. Limerent bosses frequently overdo it in their urge to demonstrate their high regard to their Limerent object. Now, sometimes this recognition is not too objectionable because maybe the Limerent object is actually a very good worker who warrants praise, regardless of the Limerent boss's feelings. But it is improper nonetheless. And it can obviously breed resentment in other workers who can see their boss behaving like a Limerent fool and showing favouritism. Finally, even if you do manage to suppress or hide your feelings successfully, it can still harm your career. Some Limerents become so besotted that their ability to concentrate evaporates, their productivity crashes, and their performance is compromised. Now, I hear from Limerents who have been reprimanded for wasting time and distracting their Limerent object at work. Others have lost the ability to focus on tasks and can't get things finished. Some almost dread going into work because they know it's going to be a roller coaster between delirious excitement and poor outcomes in terms of performance. This can rapidly spiral into a professional and a personal crisis. Okay, so that's a dreary prospect. How can we escape from Limerents in the workplace? Well, unfortunately, there are a number of particular challenges to overcome in the workplace before you can recover. Must be time for another list. First, there's no escaping it. You often do have to work with your co-workers. That means one of the most powerful tactics for weakening person addiction is denied to you.
Turn left.
You can't go fully no contact. There are ways to manage this, which we'll come to in a moment, but there's no denying that this makes life harder. Now, the second problem presented by the workplace is that disclosure is a massively high-risk strategy. Eliminating uncertainty is a bedrock of Limerence recovery, and disclosing your feelings, if you're free to act on them, is usually a decisive move, but not in the workplace, for all the reasons that we've outlined and all the potential professional consequences. Unless you're really confident that they're into you too, it's just not worth that risk. But if you do decide to reveal your feelings, make sure you do it outside of the work environment. The third limitation is a lack of freedom. It's unlikely you are free to control many of the workplace factors that reinforce Limerence. Most people don't have control over their working schedule, the teams they're assigned to, or the environment that they're working in. That limits the actions that they can take. Now, this problem is even worse if your Limerent object is your boss. You can't avoid them, and you can't easily or legitimately ask to be reassigned without a good reason. Now, this can lead to both fatalism and giving up, but also a complicated sort of secret pleasure. If I can't escape, then I can't be blamed for surrendering to the fantasy. And that last point highlights a fourth constraint. It's not just about your conduct. Sometimes the Limerent object enjoys the attention and they encourage the attachment. Perhaps they aren't a Limerent themselves, but just enjoy the flirtatious, ego-boosting thrill of having a co-worker who's besotted with them. They might seek you out and flirt, banter, and resist your attempts to escape. Some people do love being a Limerent object. They enjoy the sort of frisson of excitement, of pushing at boundaries of propriety, as long as they still have plausible deniability. They want to play because it makes work more fun for them. You, meanwhile, are trapped in Limerence limbo. Okay, so that's a long list of problems and constraints. Let's end by focusing on solutions. What can you do to get out of workplace Limerence? Well, the obvious but also most likely impractical solution is to leave and get a new job. Some people do this, and it does solve the problem. But assuming that's not possible and you need to stay in the same job, recovery begins with being honest with yourself about what's happening. Don't keep following your instincts and hope that you can tough it out somehow and try and keep the good vibes without the bad consequences. Accept that this is a problem and it's on you to solve it. Let go of the fantasies and the daydreams and face the situation. this review of Workplace Limerance. I hope it's been helpful. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like more, and I'll see you next time.
From small wins to short-term goals and lifelong dreams.
Limerance is a state of intense romantic infatuation that feels like you're addicted to another person. It can be a burden at any time, but times like Valentine's Day really bring those moments of romantic pain into sharp relief. Maybe you're suffering with unrequited love, or maybe forbidden love, or maybe you're just trying to bond with someone who's giving you mixed messages and uncertain commitment, and you end up trapped in a state of kind of limerance limbo, where you're unable to get closer, but you're also unwilling to give up. Well, getting over limerance is a massive task, but there are some concrete things that you can do to improve the situation. So for anyone suffering right now with heartache this Valentine's Day, here are 6 big steps that you can take to adjust your mindset about what limerance is and what it means for your life. And these should give you some immediate relief from the pain and help set you up for longer term recovery. Hi, my name is Tom Bellamy and I'm a neuroscientist and writer. And for 8 years now I've been blogging all about limerance at livingwithlimerance.com. And over those years we've built up a huge database of knowledge about the experience of limerance, that altered state of mind of romantic obsession, and how to recover from it. One of the critical steps in getting rid of unwanted limerance is to get into what could be called a recovery mindset. And there are 6 key insights that really help to kind of shift your thinking into that new perspective. 6 important concepts that begin to reverse the mental programming. So let's go through it. Okay, so the first principle is that limerance is happening in your head. So limerance fundamentally is about neurochemistry. It feels spectacular, but that feeling is coming from within you. That means the recovery process has to happen in your head too. You are ultimately the only one who can reverse it, but that also means that you do have the power to do so. So it's probably been entirely unwitting on your part, but what's happened is that you've gradually trained yourself into limerance, into a habit, and it's possible to train yourself out of that habit as well. So a crucial first step in recovery is accepting that the problem is yours to own, but that you can solve it. Okay, principle number 2, which is linked into the previous idea, is that they are not that special. So your limerant object is special, but only because they trigger your limerant response. So obviously somebody who can make you feel ecstatic just by being with them, or crush your dreams with a cold word, is special, but it's you that makes them special. They seem magnificent because of the way that you respond to them. But actually, of course, they are just an ordinary person. It's unromantic to accept this, and it kind of spoils the story that you might be telling yourself about your limerance. But you have to see them clearly if you want to free yourself from their magnetic attraction. Now, you'll likely experience significant emotional resistance to this idea, to this reality of seeing them as a whole person. But that's your romance-addled limerant mind talking. Intellectually, you know they're only special because you make them so. So the third concept is that you can't just be friends. Okay, this one hurts. So it's a shame, it's probably the biggest loss associated with limerance, is if your limerant object is a genuinely good person, then of course you want to try and maintain a relationship with them. And a friendship seems like the obvious choice. Now you might find yourself sort of bargaining on this and saying, well, I'm not going to let limerance decide who I can be friends with, or or I'm not going to let down a friend just because I've got a crush on them. But the ultimate truth of the situation is that you will always want more from them. So they trigger something very deep in you. They trigger patterns of behaviour that you learned in your past because they're connecting to subconscious needs which you might never fully understand, but shape your sensibility to romance. So seeking friendship with a limerent object that you're infatuated with is generally a lost cause. You can't be an authentic friend to someone that you're infatuated with. It isn't good for either of you to try and keep that inauthentic friendship going. You're trying to do two contradictory things: build an emotional bond while turning off romantic desire. And it's just not feasible to be friends with somebody like that until you have overcome the limerence form. You need space and distance to get your head straight. Otherwise, if you look at limerence like an addiction, it's a bit like an alcoholic trying to get sober through social drinking.
Want something tasty? Try it all if you could.
It's not a very convincing plan. Okay, so concept number 4 is that you can't predict how they will behave. So most limerents feel an extraordinary sense of emotional connection to their limerent object, and that misleads them into believing that they really know them. Now, don't fool yourself into believing that you can predict how they will react to what you say or do, because almost by definition, limerents have a distorted view of their limerent object.
Keep right.
Their judgment is
Then take
impaired
the exit on the
because
right.
they're in an altered state of mind. And the idealization of a limerent object means that you're not really seeing them clearly. You're projecting a lot of your own hopes and romantic dreams onto them. And the version of the limerent object that lives in your head is not the same as the real person that lives in the world. And unfortunately, many limerents have had the awful experience of thinking that they understand how their limerent object is going to react to something that they say or do, and then feeling that rush of embarrassment when their limerent object does something very different and very unpredictable. They had a kind of romantic movie running in their heads, but the limerent object doesn't have the script and ruins everything. Okay, principle number 5, you can only control your own behaviour. If you want the limerence to stop, you have to take on the responsibility of stopping it. Another really common mistake is to think that you can persuade other people to behave in a way that you believe will make your life easier. You might think that, say, asking your limerent object not to text or call you anymore after a certain time, or if they're feeling lonely, or asking them to tell you how they really feel about you so you can get some closure, you might believe that that's going to help, but it probably won't. So if you have a limerent object who's giving you mixed messages or kind of uncertain commitment, you'll probably just continue to get that behaviour. So they'll say things like, well, life's really complicated for me at the moment, or you know, I do care about you, but can't we just keep things simple and fun for now? So that keeps hope alive, but also keeps uncertainty alive, and it traps you in that state of limbo. That you think that by steering them into behaving in the way that you want, your limerence will subside, but that very rarely happens. Alternatively, maybe you're married or committed to somebody else, and by asking your husband or wife to spend more time with you, or go on more date nights, or spice things up a bit, you might be able to take your mind off that other person who shouldn't be occupying it. But again, none of this is actually the solution. Any plan that requires somebody else to change things to make your life easier is ultimately doomed to fail, because you have to look to yourself for the solution, because limerence is an internal battle. And finally, principle number 6 is about looking to the future. You have to believe that there's a better life ahead. So there's a lot of hope and excitement tied up in limerence. It's all about romantic possibility. But if you've got to the point of realising that it's gone toxic and turned into person addiction, that's a big loss to face. So the hope of bliss, the promise behaviour dictate your mood. So to recover fully, there has to be a prospect of a happier future that you can direct your efforts towards. So that last mindset shift is all about seeking new purpose to focus your energy and your hopes upon. Look at your life and think about where are the major points of pain. What are the unfulfilled dreams that you have that maybe you've set to one side whilst you tied yourself up in limerence limbo in the hope that that would be the solution to the problem. So think about the opportunity costs of the things that you've not been able to do while you've been caught up in this infatuation. Then think about what would actually give you a lasting sense of purpose and a lasting sense of happiness. It might be about relationships, or it might be about work, or it might be about health. It might be some soul-nourishing hobby or pursuit or charitable endeavour. Obviously, it's a very personal thing to try and identify these purposeful goals that you can work towards. But it's really important to leave limerence in the past and look at it as a stage in life that you're now working beyond into a phase of personal renewal where you're finding something new and positive to work towards. Okay, so those are the 6 critical mindset shifts that get you ready and can help with recovery from limerence. But obviously there's a lot more to the story than that. Now, if you are in a mess with limerence and you need urgent help to escape, I do have an online course that is specifically designed to help deprogram you out of that altered state of mind quickly and efficiently and help plan for a more purposeful future. So there's a link in the description below for those people who think that they would benefit from that course, but there's lots of free resources available at livingwithlimerance.com too. So head over there to the resources page to find more information about how to recover from limerence. Okay, that's it. So for anyone suffering with limerence this Valentine's Day, or any other day that you're watching this really, I wish you strength and I hope that this video has helped. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe if you'd like more, and I'll see you next time.
Keep left, then turn left.
저에게 이분 는 자유죠. 광활한 우주에서 하고 싶은 일을 마음껏 할 수가 있거든요.
Limerence is a massive natural high and exhilarating romantic intoxication and obsessive and irresistible desire for another person. It feels like you're addicted to them. While limerence is a wild ride at first, it can easily become unhealthy under the wrong circumstances. Prolonged episodes of limerence are exhausting and demoralizing. For some people, romantic life can feel like a series of frustrating obsessions that ruin their chances of happiness. In this video, I'm going to explain how to escape that trap and how limerence can be integrated into life in a healthy and effective way so that you can thrive. Hi, my name is Tom Bellamy. I'm a neuroscientist and writer, and I blog all about limerence at livingwithlimerance.com. I'm also the author of the book Smitten, which explains what limerence is, how neuroscience can help us make sense of it, and how to recover from it. Right, let's talk about the best cure for limerence. My view of limerence is the same as Dorothy Tenoff's, the psychologist who first defined the experience. It's an altered state of mind that many people experience in the early stages of love. In fact, about half the population experience limerence at some point in their lives, so it seems a bit odd to be talking about curing it as though it's a disease. I mean, we wouldn't want to cure love after all. Well, limerence does feel fantastic at first, but it can go quite spectacularly wrong. It progresses in stages, and what starts out as giddy euphoria can turn into fixation and desperation. Late-stage limerence can become a debilitating addiction to another person. That's when a cure is needed. Some limerence limerents' lives can almost be defined by a series of bad limerents
You have a right.
episodes, and there's two common scenarios that can trap people. First, there is limerence limbo, a state of perpetual longing where the limerent nurtures a fantasy that grows into an obsession, but they're unable or unwilling to actually seek a relationship with their limerent object. The second scenario is that the limerent object is trouble. So perhaps they're non-committal or give mixed messages, perhaps they just have bad character. It's rough when you repeatedly feel that glimmer of limerent attraction for people who are bad news. Now, in a previous video, which I'll link below, I talked about how to overcome limerence for a specific limerent object, how to break out of that altered state of mind when it's clear that there's no chance of a healthy relationship. And that's great as a decisive response, but most limerents go through multiple episodes of limerence in their lives, and many serial limerents come to a point where they wish they could control or at least moderate their core sensitivity to limerence. The difficulty is that limerence is an aspect of who we are. It's built into us. It might be triggered by the sudden appearance of a new limerent object, but there's also some deeper psychological vulnerability that primes us to succumb to it. The best bet for limerence as a cure is not to eliminate it, but to transition from letting it lead you by the nose to understanding its power and directing it productively. The best strategy I know of for achieving that is to live a purposeful life. And that needs some explanation. If you type purpose into Google, you get two primary meanings. One, the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Two, a person's sense of resolve or determination. Both definitions are relevant for living with purpose. The idea of finding your purpose has a lot of resonance for some people. The concept that there is a calling, that you are suited to a vocation that will be fulfilling, or an occupation that will give your life meaning. Now, this could be a profession, or a family, or charity, or wealth, or whatever. The point is that seeking your purpose is seen as a boost to happiness. Now, counter-argument to that idea is that finding a purpose is misguided. You should be wary of seeking meaning in a specific vocation, and instead see being purposeful as the primary goal of a good life. So your focus should be on the actions that you take along the way and the direction that you're aiming in, rather than on reaching a specific destination. Now, those two meanings are, of course, intertwined. So as the Stoic philosopher Seneca puts it, you are asked what I seek from philosophy: to live every day with purpose, and in doing so to find the task that nature has set for me. By striving well, I learn what I am fitted to achieve. By living with purpose, you will begin to realize what you are suited to do, what tasks call to you, and what ideas and projects excite you. And you can then use that new knowledge about yourself to pursue specific goals. And this, for me, is the essence of purposeful living. It's living in a way that is intentional, conscious, and determined. It means making decisions on the basis of what would improve your life. Being purposeful is in fact the best way to find a specific purpose. Okay, so with that philosophizing out of the way, how do we practically start to manage limerence by living with purpose? The central idea is that you stop acting in a purely instinctive way. Your instincts in the thick of limerence are pushing you in one direction to get closer to your limerent object. Those instincts are hardwired into your brain and are desperately urging you to try and pair bond with them, using all the force of millions of years of evolutionary history. It takes conscious efforts to counteract that. Checking your instincts means prioritizing long-term goals over short-term thrills, making rational decisions rather than being led by the nose by your feelings. Fundamentally, how you act is more important than how you feel. Feelings are complex, mercurial things, stimulated by subconscious drives that are hard to untangle. While they should be acknowledged and respected, it's our actions that define us. Judge yourself by your actions, not by your feelings or your motives. That can cut through a lot of the fog of the desperate hope and irrational behaviour and wishful thinking that clouds Limerance. So here's what you've got to do. 1. Be honest about your motives. Honesty is the bedrock of purposeful living. Limerance is a master of deception. A lot of the problems it causes are worsened by the little lies and rationalizations that we tell ourselves to justify our sometimes dishonorable behavior. I can handle it. We're just friends. I know I'm married, but I'm not really going to do anything. I'm just enjoying the buzz. Limerant feelings aren't subtle. It's obvious what they really mean. Rationalizations about just being friends with a Limerant object are, of course, an excuse, and concealing your true motives with self-serving justifications. Being honest means cutting through those ego-protecting excuses and accepting the truth. Being purposeful means dropping the pretense and facing the real basis of your behaviour. So learn to recognise when you're doing something because it might give you a Limerance fix rather than because it's the right thing to do. Ruthless self-honesty is the answer. Then forgive yourself for being human, but do the right thing with purpose. Number 2, understand yourself. Often those little lies and rationalizations that we tell ourselves are all about trying to maintain our self-image, that version of ourselves that we want the world to believe in. Through adolescence and early adulthood, we all tend to try on different personas to see how they fit. This is normal and healthy self-exploration, but as adulthood progresses, we need to come to an acceptance of who we are at our core if we're going to live authentic lives. Limerance often flares up in moments where we aren't living in harmony with ourselves, when we're going against the grain of our true nature. When we don't know ourselves, it's easy to believe that someone else can solve our emotional problems for us, or even that through rescuing our Limerant object from their problems, we can somehow evade our own. Sometimes we just want to escape from an unhappy status quo by embracing that wild romantic fantasy. And getting to know yourself and developing self-awareness is a keystone skill for life. It's the foundation from which you can make good decisions, because if your goals are misaligned with your nature, you're always going to feel a bit crooked. So find out who you are rather than who you think you should be, or even worse, who other people think you should be. So they'll have lots of opinions, say parents who think that you should become a doctor, or lifestyle influencers who think that all the coolest people travel the world as digital nomads. You need to find your own nature in order to ground yourself, because growth requires secure roots. You need that before you can go off exploring. I mean, sometimes you should do something that is outside your comfort zone. So because it's worth doing, you should push yourself. So there are times when your fears are holding you back from self-fulfillment. But there's other times when your fears are protecting you from danger. Without self-awareness, it's hard to tell the difference. Number 3, understand your drives. So we are, all of us, a hugely complex milieu of influences. I'm not sure we'll ever really be able to fully understand the foundation of our own temperaments and psychological makeup, but there are lessons to be learned from examining our most powerful drives. In fact, there's utility in just knowing what they are. Sometimes the origin of our drives can be pretty grim, so things like disordered bonding in childhood through abuse, neglect or trauma is going to obviously have a profound effect on adult life. Given that range of lived experience out there, I'm not going to try and draw any universal truths, but what I'll do is illustrate what I mean with a personal anecdote. So I've only ever become limerent for damsels in distress, specifically women who are bold and confident on the outside but hiding an emotional wound within. I don't fully understand why. It will be a combination of the role models and the formative experiences I had when I was growing up, about my family of origin and their dynamics, about cultural conditioning, romantic notions about knights in shining armour and things like that. But regardless of all those fractional contributions, I'm now very aware of the fact that I am vulnerable to limerence with women that fit this model. Getting a handle on your drives in this way and your triggers, even if you don't fully understand their basis, can allow you to change your behaviour. Once you spot the pattern, it neutralises a lot of the power of limerence. You're not going to get caught out. You'll realise it's not a cosmic force or a meeting of souls. It's my limerence response being activated by a predictable set of triggers. That empowers you to act accordingly, to act purposefully, to overcome your vulnerabilities and make better choices. Number 4, decide what you want to do. Now, one of my favourite quotes is from the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. We judge ourselves by what we feel capable of doing, while others judge us by what we have already done. I like that quote for a couple of reasons. First, it helps draw attention to our tendency for self-aggrandizement, but second, and perhaps less obviously, it focuses on the importance of doing rather than being. So there's a natural tendency to identify ourselves by what we do for a living. I am a lumberjack, for example. But linking self-esteem to identity can be destructive. I am a writer is actually quite different from I write. Understanding yourself and your drives can lead you through this distinction. So if you want to express an idea or you want to share your life experience with other people, then you sit down and write. If you want to be a writer, then you're aspiring to a notion of a kind of imagined identity with associated cultural and personal expectations. So you may shop for the perfect writing desk, or might strategize about the most promising genre for a bestseller. Might get defensive if people ask you how your writing is going, because as you see it, there's an implicit criticism of your identity as a writer if it makes you confront the fact that you haven't written anything. So we judge others by what they have done, because that's the only measure that really matters. You may be a wonderful, sensitive, romantic soul full of ideas and potential, and I hope so, because those people are great. But other people do not have access to that interior world. They can only see what you have done. So make sure you're doing something that you care about and enjoy, and do it with purpose. Number 5, seek happiness, not pleasure. The final aspect of a purposeful life comes from this last notion. Do something that you care about because it will bring you happiness, proper happiness, lasting satisfaction of time well spent, a life well lived, and an ambition fulfilled. Not the transient pleasure of spectacle or the passive distraction of entertainment or the thrill of an illicit high. Happiness comes from self-esteem and self-respect, and they come most reliably from concrete achievements. Limerence is not a route to a purposeful life. If anything, limerence is a signal from your subconscious that something isn't right, that you're craving something new and seeking relief from an emotional ache that you hope someone else can fix. Living a purposeful life, in contrast, can protect you from unwanted limerence, because you won't be seeking escape. You won't be so psychologically open to finding thrills elsewhere that will disrupt your life if you're enjoying your life. Purposeful living is a cure for limerence in the sense that it allows you to act decisively when you encounter a new limerent object and ask the right questions. Are you free to bond? Are they a good match? Will they add to your purposeful life or disrupt it? When your life's in good shape, it's a lot easier to make decisions. You just choose the option that fits your purpose. It might take a lifetime to fully understand why you are how you are and why you fall so spectacularly for some people, but you stand a much better chance and you'll have a much better time of it if you live your life purposefully. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to know more about how to avoid some of the commonest mistakes that limerence make, which can make the situation worse, check out this video next for a breakdown. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you'd like more, and I'll see you next time.
Ipabaon ng favorite nilang Chucky. Body sa saya, body pa sa sustansya.
Grammarly helps me get the best grades possible while depleting the least amount of hours of my week. I'm Lauren Taylor, I'm a student and future CMO, and I am a Grammarly user. I first got Grammarly to help me with my college application essays, but now it's kind of cool because it's evolved as a platform. Grammarly's AI Compose can help me narrow down what to write about. I can, in 15-20 minutes, have a decent outline of what I'm going to be writing over the next week or two. It can tell me things like add more direct quotes if maybe it's gotten a little stale. One of Grammarly's best features is the AI and plagiarism detector. If I quote someone a little too closely, Grammarly can pull that article for me and help me create